Good afternoon and welcome to this June 16th, 2023 meeting of the Rotary Club of Brentwood. I am your I don't know. I'm your way past president, Keeley Hall, and I'm in thank you for that rousing applause. In no way, shape, or form am I as awesome as your current president, Jane Covington, but she is, alas, visiting her father in Virginia, so we are missing her today. They have exhumed me from the mothballs, and I get to have this opportunity to, I don't know, in some tiny way, redeem myself, or perhaps return myself to former glory or lack thereof. All right, Hunter McCarty there he is. Hunter McCarty has our invocation this morning, and John Kreft, whom I saw earlier, has our pledge and four-way test. So we'll start off with Hunter. Hunter, come get us started.
Thank you. Please pray with me. We invoke your blessing on this meeting and upon our being together. We acknowledge that wherever we go, we're always in your presence. We pray that our actions may reflect this awareness for whatever our future will bring. Help us during our struggles for justice and truth to comfort one another without hatred or bitterness and to work together with mutual forbearance and respect. Comfort and relieve your servants, especially Susie Lindsay, James Davis, Sarah Johnson, Jason Cook, Harold Fogelberg, Jared Taxley, Jean Harmon, Leon Partain, and Roger Reed. Give your power of healing to those who minister to their needs. As we approach Father's Day, we thank you for all the fathers and father figures in this world and for the many ways you use them to lovingly guide others to your heart. We ask that you would bless them and give them great joy and peace. Thank you for this good group and for letting us know that those great among us must first become great in serving others. Bless us with the pure pleasure of service and the joy of giving. Amen.
Wait.
Four-way test. Number one. Number two. Number three.
Friendships.
And number four.
Sir.
We certainly hope our help.
Certainly hope so.
All right, now Steve Hammers is going to introduce our guests and visiting Rotarians.
But Keeley Hall will introduce.
I was trying to figure out how I was going to do it with the microphone.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I have two guests with us today, Owen and his father Dan, and I'm gonna pronounce it terribly, Zdansky. I mean, I was close. Would you guys like to introduce yourselves at all? Steve, would you be able to get them the mic?
Hey, everybody. Thank you for allowing us to come by as a guest. I'm Dan Zdansky. You're real close. I've been a resident here in Brentwood with my family for about 12 years now. And my father-in-law was a lifetime Rotarian. He went some crazy streak, like 30 years of not missing a meeting, even when he was visiting somewhere he'll be there. And I really just recently learned there was a chapter here and about to come by and say hello. So, thank you.
My name's Owen. I just recently actually started a business here in Brentwood. I grew up here my whole life, and my dad recommended me to come in here, so I appreciate you guys having me out. I'm looking forward to it.
Welcome to both of y'all.
Glad to have you. One more guest for one last week, Becky Nunley. Say hello to everybody again. So if everything goes well and her records don't come back, with a past record, she'll be inducted next week. That's it.
All right, and now past president Michael Heineman is going to do Happy Bucks for us.
All righty. This is Father's Day weekend. Some of you are fathers. Some of you have had fathers. I suggest that now's a great time to honor them, and let's celebrate. And if there's nothing else, there should be something else to be happy about.
Has nothing to do with fathers, but it's my wife's birthday today, so I'm happy.
Second granddaughter, middle grandchild, just got accepted to the University of Edinburgh, where she's going to study forensic psychology. I hope by the time she graduates, I find out what that means. And 2 weeks from today, I will be in Scotland.
Hi, I'm George Barrett, and I have a father who I'd love to honor because many of you know him and you don't know that you know him, because when you went to the movies back in those days when they had double features, in between the double features was something called Universal Newsreel. Does that ring a bell with anybody? That no. And between 1933 and 1966, when they closed up, my father was the film librarian and editor for Universal Newsreel. And it was an interesting life with him. We had to watch a lot of TV shows like The Victory at Sea when it came out, because he had such involvement with that at the point. But even now, though, every once in a while, I'll be watching something on television and they'll show some old film clip. And in the top right corner, it will say Universal Newsreel. And that's from the library that he had, that's in the National Archives right now. Thank you.
I'd like to commemorate my dad, Chick Brown, who was passed away at the age of 90 in 2012, but also my grandfather, John Harrison Davis, grew up on a farm in Yankton, South Dakota. Didn't go to undergraduate school, but was admitted to Northwestern Dental School and served in World War I as a head surgeon on ambulance trains coming back from the front. But I was reminded of that, the kind of reach we have generation to generation, and that his 135th birthday was last week. And when you think about little kids that you interact with, grandkids and so forth, many of them will survive long beyond the end of this century. You think about the span of time that you have contact with people, personal contact, close relationship, and it spans sometimes as much as 200 years.
Thank you, sir. My father passed away at 95. He was 6'2" and had a full head of wavy white hair, something he did not leave me. My mother's father was 5'9", pudgy and bald. That I got.
You said there must be something we're happy for. Today's Friday, and we're in beautiful Brentwood, Tennessee.
That's right, Bear Country.
Well, I was very, very happy last week, still very happy riding the wave, but we didn't do Happy Bucks. Last Friday, my wife and I went to her obstetrician and we did an ultrasound, and we have a beautiful 22 weeks along baby girl coming in October. So very, very excited for that.
So I'm looking forward to Father's Day. If anybody needs me over for lunch or something, my son actually did remember it's Father's Day, and he said, "Dad, I can't be with you. I've got something really important. I'm going to Bonnaroo, so so I'm not even worth the price of a Bonnaroo ticket."
Anybody else have anything to celebrate?
I'm alone.
Thank you all very much.
All right. All right. Somebody go be friends with Steve. Drew Rogers. There he is. Drew Rogers has an announcement. Don't go far. Ooh, it's a little high. Oh, very good. Great. Would you be able to pull, you might want to, yeah, there you go. Alan, thank you. You can always you give our new dad something to look forward to as a dad when you tell stories about your son forgetting that it's Father's Day and going to Bonnaroo. So thank you for that. Okay, so let me give you a little bit of background. You have a QR code standing here in front of you. If you just, for those of you that don't know what a QR code is, if you take your phone out and you have a camera on your phone, if you just point it at the QR code, it will give you an option to pull up a website. You now have received 3 of these. 2 via email. The first one was not correct. The second one that came out this morning is correct, and this one is too. It will take you directly to the RI Foundation website. So let me give you a little bit of context for why you are seeing this QR code. On Sunday last week, I received a message from Jane, and it comes from Bob Huffman, and you can probably hear his voice saying these things, but bragging rights are at stake here. Your club and the Columbia Breakfast Club are neck and neck, but the Columbia Breakfast Club is first in per capita giving. You impressed me as a type A driven personality, and that you are not a second place kind of president. Here's the issue though. The economies of scale are against you. To move the needle, $10 per capita giving would require a $1,000 donation. Last year, your club finished second or in the first loser's spot. Again, you don't seem like the type that likes to lose. So that was the message to me. I can't think of a better way to send Jane, who's done a tremendous job as president of this club, out as Club of the Year and #1 in per capita giving. So the idea behind this QR code was to make it as easy as possible so that you could point your phone at this. It will bring up a website. That is the RI Foundation website. You will have to log in to the website to make a donation. What we're asking each club member to do is $20 per club member gets us to #1 in per capita giving. You can do it now. You can do it when you get back to your computer and you see that QR code in your email inbox, but would really appreciate you doing that. I think it would be an amazing way to send Jane out. And so thank you for that. If you have any questions, come grab me after the meeting today. Thank you. And here's the thing. We know that 76% of the membership of that Columbia Club are auctioneers. And you know what auctioneers do. They pit 2 bidders against one another. They say, I've got $12 here. Do I have 13, 12, 13? And then they get 13. Like, I got 13. You're losing it. You're going to be out. And then they're going to do something crazy like saying, what if we got 2 of these things that you're both bidding on? Can we get 2 of these? Columbia knows that they're in first and they know that we're coming after them. So maybe we go even above and beyond the $10 or $20 per person. If you got it, give it. If you can't, we understand. Okay. Please remember that our installation banquet is on Thursday, June 29th. And please, if you have not already, RSVP to the email that was sent out earlier. I believe it was early this week. This week's been a long week, y'all, but I think it was earlier this week. RSVP to that and let them know whether you're going to be coming or not and whether you're going to be bringing a guest. Again, this year that will be at Richland Country Club, and it will take the place, as it always does, of our meeting the next Friday. So do be here at the Martin Center next week, next Friday, but then the next week. Thursday night, Richland Country Club, not here that Friday at the Martin Center. Alan. And now Larry Kane has a golf tournament announcement. Mr. Larry.
Okay, I have forgotten my golf hat 2 weeks in a row, so don't anybody remind me of that. We're 85 days out. We're about 65% of where we need to be on our goal. We've got most of the major sponsors in, but there's still a bunch hanging out there that were in last year that I haven't heard from. I've asked a couple of you this morning. Everybody said, oh yeah, we're in, everything's fine. So I think we're going to be okay there. Here's the number that scares me. Last year, we had 100 and 2 whole sponsors. That's our cheapest that's our least expensive sponsor. It's $350. It's the easiest sale, right? We had 102 of those. As of today, we have 10. You own them. They're all yours. So get on those whole sponsors. They're, like I said, $350. They were in it last year, so it should be a pretty easy sale for you. But let's get started on those. That's going to hurt us a lot if we don't get that number up pretty quick. I'm not worried about the majors. Our players are taken care of. Our food's taken care of. Everything is ready to go, except we got to raise the money to do what we did last week when y'all sat here and watched us give out $30,000 to different charities. Most of, as you know, all that came from our foundation, which is where our money goes. So stay on those whole sponsors. Stay on any sponsor that you had last year that you haven't contacted yet. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Now, Patrick Wright is going to make his way up here, and he's got a quick announcement, and then he's going to stealthily grab the happy bucks on his way back to his seat.
Very correct there, Mr. Hall. Very quickly, one last public service announcement from your soon-to-be immediate past treasurer, which role I have contrived in my mind is going to be very close runner-up to immediate past president. So if you have dues outstanding, please make an effort to get those in as much as possible before the end of the quarter, end of the month. I'll be rolling out, Jason will be rolling in, Drew and his team will be running with the club at that point, but we're in great shape, but I would appreciate you making that effort to get those paid. You can pay online, you can call me on the phone, I can take your information over the phone and do it through an app. And but again, would appreciate that very much. Thank you.
I know. I can hear your slow claps and your swelling chants of trivia. But alas, we are out of time this morning. No applause. So it is now time for Sybil to come up and introduce our illustrious speaker for the day. Sybil.
All right, let me get my glasses here. Okay, so I am so honored to introduce our speaker today. Richard Casper is a Marine Corps veteran, Purple Heart recipient, artist, entrepreneur, and a songwriter with over 70 placements in film and TV. Richard served in the United States Marine Corps from 2003 to 2007. He went on to graduate from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, where he conceived the idea for CreatiVets. Richard was named to Time Magazine's Next Generation Leaders in 2017. He was featured in a documentary called Evidence of Things Unseen and was one of 33 scholars chosen to be in the prestigious Bush Institute's inaugural Stand To Veteran Leadership Program. Richard has taught art at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, Virginia Commonwealth University, Belmont University, and the University of Southern California. He resides in Nashville with his lovely wife, Ashley, and their beautiful son, Barrett. And I just learned today is expecting a little girl in August. And now I'd like to ask Linus to please show the video when Richard was named CNN Hero in 2022.
Sometimes the only way to get through unimaginable pain is to find a way to share it. The way Richard Casper shared his happened in an art class. He returned from Iraq riddled with post-traumatic stress, a disc problem, and a brain injury. His Humvee had been blown up 4 times and he had watched his best friend die. Richard struggled with his re-entry until this 6'5" tower of inspiration picked up a brush and stroke by stroke shared his pain. He created a picture of Luke's gravesite with his arm reaching out to touch the headstone and a background awash in blood red. When his classmates critiqued it, this Purple Heart Marine felt seen for the first time since coming home. He went on to graduate from art school and in 2013 launched CreatiVets to help others like him find peace through songwriting and visual art. So far, more than 1,600 veterans have signed up, each one just like Richard, sharing their pain, letting the art and the music do what they do best, bind them together in the truth of their stories from the battlefield so they can find their way through and heal.
When I was lead vehicle commander, my gunner, Luke Yepson, became one of my best friends really quickly. There's the biggest boot of them all right there. He's mine. Proud of it. Luke was up in the gun when he was shot and killed by a sniper. In the infantry, they have to strip away all your vulnerabilities. They have to, because you're not going to survive in war. But they never gave me my vulnerability back. And I'm so thankful that I fell into art. Art is so emotional and vulnerable. It was like I said everything without saying anything.
So right now we're backstage, like nobody else gets to go besides the artists.
So I created a program built on using the arts and music to help veterans. And we pair them with #1 songwriters or hit writers.
John, what's up, John?
Tell their story for the first time.
Guy drove in with a motorcycle full of explosives and killed my buddy, man. Man, it messed me up. They will shoulder the burden that they already have done.
And I try to explain to him in the beginning, it's going to be easier to tell your story once you create your art piece.
I thank God for all the men out there making love.
Because you're not going to be talking about you, you're going to be talking about your art piece and focus on it.
See some things that make this can't see.
They finally had the words to say what they never could say before.
There's something breaking out of me.
The next day after the writing session, we record all of the songs. Are you guys ready to rock? It's incredible to see their life experience go from just a story I tell to a song I could share with everybody. I want them to know that art's an option for healing. Give me a hug, dude. I lost it like twice on that one. It's what allows you to understand that it's okay to not be okay. I just go back to everything I suffered from, and I really go back to Luke. It was his death that brought this for me to create. And so every time a veteran gets saved, I'm like, Luke just saved someone else. I just know he'd be looking down, just being like, you're doing what you're meant to do. You're truly living for both of us.
It's my honor to present CNN hero Richard Casper.
Oh, it kills me. And Luke's brother is here with me tonight. Thank you for helping me carry on his legacy. I'm a Marine. I'm not supposed to be the first one crying up here. Every day, 20 veterans and members of the military community take their own lives. That's heartbreaking reality. Should concern us all. That's why CreatiVets is working to seek out and help these veterans and military personnel through the power of the arts. By sharing our story, we hope to inspire others to join us. Together, we can make a real difference in the lives of those who have given so much to our country. Thank you all so much.
Please join me in welcoming Richard Casper.
Thank you. Oh, the standing ovation already. Stop it. That's good. I appreciate it. Oh, the button went. Sweet. Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate it was Sybil's idea to play that video. Yeah, it's been a crazy year for us, all the people who've seen what we've done and they come out and support us. And I'm just thankful to be here. That's why I've been so busy. We've been trying to do this for a while now, but I keep being pulled in different directions. But I really wanted to share my story, this path that I've taken to create CreatiVets and tell you some stories behind that. But one fun fact now, though,
is that technically I starred in CNN Heroes with Kevin Bacon. So you all now are 1 degree from Kevin Bacon because you know me. Oh man, I'm sorry. I just got some people, you know, they don't know the Kevin Bacon. And let me make sure, is it the middle clicker or is it the right click? Sweet. All right. Sorry. I have a brain injury. That's what my wife loves that. I was like, I got a brain injury. I swear I forgot to take out the laundry. So I really want to talk about this because I was not an artist or a musician before war. So I wanted you to get to know me before war. So that's me right in the middle, that beautiful man. I went from a town of 1,100 people, Washburn, Illinois. It's a farming town, 22 kids in my graduating class. And so I ended up being prom king, class clown, but it didn't take much because again, there's like 7 dudes in the class. So, but I was still like, I had that personality. Like I could be up in front of anybody and I could speak and I could just have the time of my life just living. And I absolutely loved it. But this is also the same year, 9/11. So I was a junior in 2001 when the towers fell. At this point, I already knew because my family, my dad was one of 11, all of them served in the military, none of them Marines though. And I said, you know, before that, I didn't know what I wanted to do until those towers fell. And I said, I want to be a Marine. I want to be the first one overseas. And I want to be fighting for this country and doing what I need to do. And so it was only 2 weeks out of high school in 2003 when I graduated that I was already being shipped out to Camp Pendleton, MCRD, San Diego, to go through the process of being an infantry Marine. So as you imagine, 2003, November, that's when we first pushing into Fallujah. So when I get there, I'm sitting here thinking like, okay, I'm about to do this. And in boot camp, they came out with this list of people. And if you've never been in the military, you do not want to be on a list in boot camp. They came out and they said, you know, Casper, blah, 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 blah. And they said, we're special testers. Now, here's something else funny about me. When I was in high school, I knew I was going to the Marine Corps. So I really fudged on the tests. So if it was a state standardized test, I'd be like C, just all the way down the middle, be like, done. Because in my head, I was just a young, dumb kid that was like, I'm not going to college. I'm going to be Marines for 20 years. And so when they came out and said I was a special tester, I legitimately, they thought I was dumb. I thought they were like, here's the special Marines. You guys go over here. And so I'm sitting here thinking like, what is this? Because they're not telling us what the special testers thing is. It's only 2 weeks into boot camp. And so we go to this other place in off base a little bit, and we're doing these weird, they're asking us weird questions like, do you talk in your sleep? Does your family go to the country? Stuff like that. And so we still didn't know what it was. It started with like 400 Marines or 300 or so. And then each time we met through this 3-month boot camp, there's just less and less of us. I was like, where are they sending the other ones? I don't know what's happening. And so we got down to it and there's about 20 of us. And I think I have a brain injury, so I think this is the next slide. But so when they got to about 20 of us, they told us what we were doing. They said, you all have been selected to guard the president of the United States. You could either do it at Camp David or White House Communications in DC. And so, boom, it is this one. So I chose Camp David. I was from the country. I found out that like it was up in the mountains and you get more time to be up on Camp David and you live there. So I lived at Camp David for 14 months under George W. Bush. And so it was one of the coolest experiences of my life, but it was also, there's this part of me that was like, my friends I went to SOI with went overseas. So like I'm Casper, and in SOI, the School of Infantry, it's alphabetical. And so Cartwright's right here, Cherry's right here, Horn's down here. And I can't find out week by week, Cartwright died, Cherry died, Horn died, Longoria died. And I'm sitting here thinking, because they're the first ones going. And so I have not even went to Iraq yet, and I have survivor guilt. Because I'm like, why am I on this path? Why am I getting this cushy job when all my friends are going to dying? And so I didn't know what the bigger picture was. But when I did go to Iraq, which I separated from there, I was like, okay, I got to go serve. I got to go serve my country. So I left Camp David, even though they offered me to stay the rest of my term there. Because at that point, I knew I was only going to do 4 years. It was really quick. I was like, okay, I'm doing 4, not 20. And so I was like, I need to go do what I need to do. And so they sent me to 29 Palms, California. And so I started doing a workup. I was with the infantry unit 2-7, and I was doing this deployment like prep. Then they told me I couldn't make it to Iraq because they said I got out too early. I get out in June of 2007. They don't even leave till January of 2007. So I was like, well, where can I go to deploy next? And then they sent me to 1st Tank Battalion, and I went with the tow platoon. So pretty much I went from ground infantry to mounted infantry. We just rode around in Humvees. But as you see, when I got to Iraq, I still had the same personality. This is right around Christmas time. I have my like Santa hat. I brought for some reason I brought like a tattoo sleeve and a mullet wig. I was like, that was my packing list. Cause again, I was used to entertaining people, and I was like, why stop in the States? I'm going to do this when I'm over there.
And so I go overseas but within like the video said and the description of me, within the first 4 months, my Humvee was blown up 4 times. So like back to back to back. And in December, 2006, my buddy was shot and killed beside me. So he's my gunner. I was his vehicle commander. And so that hit hard. And within 4 months, they said, you're unfit for duty. So I legitimately can't do my job anymore. I had to sit on base. But back then, brain injuries, PTSD wasn't a thing. So they never sent me to get a CAT scan. They never did anything like that. I just had to stay on the base. So because I had to fight to go to war, I had to do my separation of like out of the Marine Corps before I even left for war. So when I touched down back in 29 Palms, I just checked out of the Marine Corps and left. They're like, do you need to see medical? I was like, I don't think so. You didn't send me to medical. So you're the smart ones. I'm a young kid and I don't know what's going on. And so I never saw medical and I just left the Marine Corps. And so when I went back home to Bloomington, Illinois, Peoria, Illinois area, and I was like, okay, I took 6 months off. I did some fun stuff. I was like, took my Harley to Sturgis and I did all this stuff, like lived for a little bit because I just got back home. And I was like, okay, now it's time to be serious. I need to go into school and start studying. And so I wanted to study business. And I came from an extremely poor family and I had the Montgomery GI Bill, which didn't pay for private schools or anything. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do community college for 2 years. State college will be awesome. But once I got to school, everything hit. The PTSD, the TBI, like I went downhill so fast. I had to do one-on-one speeches with my speech teacher in college. Like I'm enrolling into this class thinking everything's going to be fine. And they're like, you have to do speech. And there's these 18, 19-year-old kids who just got to college. And there's me, 22 years old, went to war, guarded a president, could do anything in front of anybody. And I couldn't even speak. And I had no idea what was going on. I would physically throw up and have to go to the bathroom if they try to put me in the center of attention. So I went down how fast. This idea that I was going to be a business owner or an entrepreneur now was like out the window for me. It was like, okay, I just need to survive at this point. I think the next one is some of the transition, what I'm talking about, like the depression, the anxiety, everything that we feel when we come home just all hit at once. And so I was in this horrible place, but I sat there and I thought, and I said, well, I've always been optimistic. I keep getting out of these situations, like my home situation. Then when I get to the Marine Corps and now I get to Camp David, like very optimistic about life. And so I say, well, what degree can I get? If I can't do entrepreneur business, something else, like I can't learn new technical skills. That's what the VA told me when they diagnosed me with my brain injury. He said, you can't learn new technical skills. It was no optimism at all. It was like, if your brain's broken, then if it doesn't fix itself in 2 years, you're broken. And so like, that's not how you talk to people about getting them better. So I'm sitting here thinking, okay, I guarded a president. I have this above top secret clearance. It's called the Yankee White Category 2, which sounds super fake, but you can Google it. So I got to hold a loaded weapon next to the president. And so I'm sitting here thinking, well, I have all this and I have this experience. So what if I'll just go into the FBI, CIA, something like that with my experience. I just need a degree to be a field agent. And so I said, you know what? I'm just going to get the easiest degree I can. I'm going to get a degree in art. I'm going to do it where kids don't want to talk to me. I don't want to talk to them. Like that's the real only reason I even tried art. It was like a cop out. But when I was going through this process, my gunner who had died, I went he's from Houston, Texas. I didn't know his family before this, but I knew that I wanted to go visit his grave. And I called him up one day just when I think white pages were still there, yellow pages. And I called the family up and I just said, hey, I just want you to know I'm coming to visit Luke's grave in Houston. And I didn't have anything else. I was just like, that's all I'm doing. I just wanted you to know that. It was like kind of like I was fishing. And they said, well, we want you to come by our house. So it was the most magical experience ever. And I've still never missed, a December in Houston. And he died in 2006. So I will never stop with his family. And you guys all met possibly Kyle last week or 2 weeks ago. Yep. And that's the brother of Luke. So the relationship that we built was actually amazing. But every time I went, I would go to his grave and I'd and my uncle took a photo of this one specifically. And so I'm sitting here in art class, learning how to do chalk pastel, oil pastel, painting, all this stuff. And I'm sitting here thinking, I need something for me and to honor Luke. This was for nobody else. This is for me. And so I take this image and I'm like, I'm learning chalk pastel. I'm just going to do this image. And so what you see here is what you see over here. When I got done with this piece, before I got done, so that red wasn't there. So everything was colored in the way it was supposed to be besides the red. And I had a teacher come behind me and he sees the image, he sees my drawing, and he says, hey, Richard, I want to encourage you to not do green for grass. I know you're going to do it because obviously the photo's right there. I want to encourage you to do a color that doesn't make sense. Like grass would never be this color. He's like, because it's going to evoke an emotion out of someone. They're going to know your story, even when you're not in the building, for them to see the art. And I'm like, that sounds really dumb. like, why would I do that? It's like, here's the image and this is what it should look like.
but like a good Marine, I'm good at taking orders. So I said, you know what, I'll just do something. I just did everything red, not knowing why, everything red. So we get to the time where we have to do critiques. And then again, I was so art dumb, I didn't know what a critique was. So I'm sitting here thinking like, what do I have to do? Like I have to talk about, I'm not talking about this. I'll put it up, but I ain't talking about this. And so I put this thing up and they said, again, he asked me in front of everybody, Richard, do you want to talk about your piece? I was like, I ain't talking about this. They said, students, what do you think about Richard's piece? And these are like, again, 18, 19-year-old kids with no life experience like whatsoever. And I'm sitting here and one by one, they're like, they didn't know my story. They didn't know I served. They didn't know anything. And they said, I think you put red in there because that's your buddy and he died and you loved him. Or I think you put red in there because you're angry your friend died. And one of them said, I think you put red in there because you were there and you saw his blood. And I'm sitting here like, how did with one color, they just know my whole story? Like, if you know veterans, you know that we don't like talking to people about our experience because we don't feel like they're going to connect. And we also want to protect them with like, we fought so you didn't have to. But for them to understand my story for a split second made me feel like they knew me and that I could trust them. So that was the moment I was like, what is this voodoo witchcraft? I was like, what is this thing that I just discovered? If I did that with one color, what can I do with all the colors? And so I just fast tracked. I was like, I'm going to do art. I'm going to try to see what this is. And so I kept going. I was like pushing it. We had someone from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago come down. And again, I'm so art dumb. I'm like, what is the school? It's 3 hours away. I was like, what is it? They're like, this is like Harvard of art schools. It's like George O'Keeffe, Walt Disney, like Hugh Hefner. But that's if you're into that. He went there. And so I was like, this is incredible. I think I'm going to try for this. But my own teacher, the one that taught me how to use this color like this, was like, I wouldn't do it. He's like, he was trying to protect me. He said, you don't have any money. He knew I came from a poor family and it didn't pay for private schools. And he's like, you either have to study art your whole life to get in here, or you have to have a lot of money to do it. And I was like, I'm neither, but I'm going to go for it. Again, optimism. I was like, let's just do it. And I went up there and I had to sell myself. I had this, everyone else had 30 pieces of art and it was all conceptual and modern. I come up with 12 pieces and only 2 had any meaning whatsoever. The others are still lives. And I'm like, you want to take me? And it took a lot of convincing, but at the end of it, I said, you know what? I was restricted. I just learned about art and I was restricted by the teachers that I had at a community college. Here's what I want to do. I want to teach you. I want to show you the loss of innocence in war, what that looks like. I want you to know what it feels like to be blown up, but without being blown up. And I think I could do that through your school. And so they let me come into their school. And it was the craziest thing ever. I was like, I can't believe it worked. So I go to the school and I really discover myself. I really discover how to hide things in these images. And for the first time in my life, I was actually excited to talk about my disabilities. Like before this, I never talked about having a brain injury. Most people can't tell when they just first meet me, but I have so many issues with it once you get to know me more. And I was like, but I'm not going to let them in on that. But now I'm like, how do I show them I have a brain injury in like a really creative way? Or how do I show them that I'm feeling suffocated? So this piece, I just found a piece of painting, or I found a random painting in the garbage, took a random screen printing thing, and then I put 4 of these G.I. Joes and I wrapped it, stapled it down, and I poked one little hole, this foot, that foot right there that's breaking out. I was like, this is me. I was like, this is me coming from my fire team into the art world. And so I started doing this thing with collage where I started discovering that art is everywhere. And if I could transition the way I think, like my warrior brain to my artist brain, I could start attacking my anxieties and depression one by one and getting this off my chest where, again, I don't have to physically talk about it. I just do it. And so I first discovered ceramic. This is hilarious because when my roommate told me he did ceramics, I was like, what do you do? Just plates and cups? Like, you put them together? Like, what do you do? I had no idea they were clay. I didn't really have an art teacher at that school I was at. I was like, we didn't have kilns. I had no idea what clay actually was. And so he's like, no, come down to the ceramics department and just work with me. And I went there and I was messing around with clay. And it was the first time, it was like, I spent 6 hours working in it and I didn't think about war once. And I was like, that's all I need. I was like, just not to think about it. And so I just go all in on ceramics just because it made me feel so cool. And that was what's really, or so good, but that was so cool about the art school was that it didn't matter what you got in on. I got in on my paintings and drawings, but from that moment on, when you get in, you could do whatever you want. And so I just went straight into ceramics and started doing this, but this is one of those pieces on my brain injury. I was like, how do I tell these kids that I was blown up a bunch of time I have a left traumatic brain injury? So I made the neck look like the IED base and made the tip of the IED coming out of my head. And it allowed me to talk about that. It allowed the students to start talking about it. And with each piece I did, they got a little bit better and better. Towards the end, I was sitting here thinking, I was frustrated. This is Now, like 2011, 2012, we're still in Iraq and Afghanistan and people are still dying, but here's these little art, like Jimmy Kimmel's daughter was in the school. So like, here's these rich kids who are just like going through life like nothing, there's no problems in the world outside. And so I'm like, how do I create art that's going to affect them in a way? And I was like, you know what? There's still people dying. I took if Washington Post has Faces of the Fallen, it shows every single person who died in real time. And so I went to that and I took the 26 service members who died in that semester. I made a helmet for every single one of them. And I put it right there under the admissions like calendar. And I called it late admissions for the ones who couldn't make it. And so that was my piece to be able to show these students. And like, as I started creating this stuff, it brought so much joy to me, even to talk about the darkest stuff. And that's what kept making me get a little bit better and a little bit better. And so after all this, I was also like, but how do I tell my story about Luke? So besides that first piece, I kind of got lost and just discovered myself through art, but I could never physically talk to someone about how awesome Luke was before he died. And I was like, Luke lived. I want to share that with everyone. How do I do that? So when I was in a creative writing class, I got the idea of, wait, I could be a songwriter. I could write this into a song. But little I know that songwriting is actually kind of hard when you first start out, especially when you don't know how to play guitar. So my old roommate taught me like 3 chords on a guitar. I went to YouTube, tried to learn. For a whole year, I was trying to write a song about Luke's life, and it did not put it into perspective. It did not. I had to like do a bunch of stuff that I was like, this doesn't honor him. Why am I trying to do this on my own when people do this for a living? So when I was in Chicago working, I was going to school at the school there in Chicago. I was working at Joe's Bar. It's a country bar, up in Nashville, won some ACM awards, but they have a ton of artists, but they had a bunch of songwriters come up. And so one of the songwriters, well, there's 4 songwriters. There was a writer's round, first time I've really seen one. And I went to each one of those writers and said, hey, have you ever written with a veteran or for a veteran before? They're like, nope. Went to one other one. And I said the same thing. He said, yeah, actually me and Billy Ray Cyrus wrote a song called Runway Lights for the staff sergeant that came home. And I was like, in my head, I was like, you're the man. And so I told him my story up in Chicago. I just said, hey, I have so much going on. I'm trying to write this story. I need to get it out of me. Will you help me tell that story? And he's like, yeah, if you want to come down to Nashville, I'll write with you. And I'm sitting here thinking like, and his name's Mark Irwin. So he wrote Alan Jackson's first #1. He has multiple, he's like 8 or 9 #1 hits now. And for me being a nobody, not understanding the music industry, for him to say yes to me was such a big deal. And so I come down to Nashville and I start telling him my story. We write a song and a half in 3 hours. And I'm sitting here that I've worked on for a year. I worked on this song. We did this an hour and a half. And that's when the idea sparked for CreatiVets. I was like, I want to bring every combat veteran I know to Nashville, the ones that don't want to talk about it, and give them these opportunities to talk about it with these hit writers. Because if you can outweigh a veteran's anxiety and depression with excitement, you can get them to do anything. And so that was what I built CreatiVets on. And so CreatiVets now, there's way more partners than this. I should have updated this. But right now, CreatiVets all over the country. It doesn't matter where you live at. We pay for your flights, your food, your housing. We've helped 2 Native American Marines from the foothill tribes of Montana, where they don't even have access to an airport very much. So it costs over $3,000 just to get them to our programs. We fly them to either one of our art programs, which right now the 3 active ones are Glassell School of Art in Houston, Belmont University, which will be here this summer. We'll have a bunch of veterans in town, and then the school there in Chicago. We pay for their flights, their tuition, their food, their housing for all 2 to 3 weeks that they're there to teach them how to tell their story through art for the first time. Here in Nashville, we fly them here and they get 4 days and they get a ride at the Grand Ole Opry backstage. We're the only ones that get access to be able to do that. And so 5 veterans will fly to town and 5 mentors will come with them. And they'll sit back there and individually tell their stories like you saw in that scene in Heroes Piece. And so now they're telling their story. And then we partner with Big Machine Records and we release this music. So over 45 songs we've released now with veteran stories from veterans, for veterans, by veterans, that also help family members understand where they're coming from. Because they're songs from having to take the life of a child to very inspirational, like patriotic songs, and just middle ground. Like, I need to tell my son that I'm broken, but how do I do that in the right way? And so it's been amazing to see like what the veterans have to tell. One of the art pieces, this is just outside of my art, just to show you the difference when it makes when someone who's never done art before does art. This was from a guy who was an EOD, like improvised or explosive ordnance disposal. And he came through the program and he didn't know what he was going to do at first. And then throughout the process, he discovered that every bomb he took apart, he just put inside himself. And so what he did with this one, he made 2 ceramic bombs and he wired them up, and seeing him put this together in the art exhibit. We do an art exhibit at the end of the program so everyone can have their friends and family come. They can talk about that one thing they can't talk about. And seeing him put this down, it was like he was working on disarming a bomb. He was putting this thing together and putting all the wires, and It was absolutely amazing. But what we're trying to do is not make everyone an artist. We're not trying to make you a songwriter, make you an artist. We're trying to transition that brain thought process so you could be successful. Because when he came into my room in that third week, he said, "Hey, I need to talk to you." He's like, before this program, before he accepted me, I was selling all my stuff because I wanted to kill myself because my kid's being raised by someone else. And I just didn't think I had any worth in my life. He's like, what I've seen here is that like, I can actually go to school. I thought there was a barrier to going to school. He's like, when I get home, I'm going to study nursing. I'm going to go back. And he did. He went home and studied nursing. He thought there was this barrier, this invisible barrier for him to go into school. He didn't think he could relate to other students. But the way we set up our programs, they interact with the other students who are not veterans. And so it gave him that ability to go there just by doing this. And this is another veteran named Gino who never did art before, but his friend was killed beside him in a cornfield in Afghanistan. Well, he shot in a cornfield, medevaced out of a pomegranate field in Afghanistan. Took 30 minutes for the chopper to get there, and that's why he died in his arms. And so you would never know, but Gino's trigger was a pomegranate. Like most veterans, when they treat us the same, you know, our friend dies, or like, here's some stuff for it. Our friend, you know, was blown from me, here's some stuff for it. He specifically said, anytime I go into a place in Target, Jewel, whatever, and I see pomegranates, that's when my triggers start. And because I'm not expecting to see them, but they bring me back to that place. And so he ended up using that. We try to reverse their triggers. And so I encouraged him to use the pomegranate to show death. And so by the end of the program, he was calling me and being like, "Richard, I can't find a pomegranate anywhere. I went to Target, I went to Jewel." And I'm sitting here thinking, like, it only took 3 weeks and now that trigger's gone. Like, he's using it as a way to tell his story. And again, he didn't go on to be an artist. He still does it with Procreate. He does art every day, like for himself, but he's not trying to be an artist. He's just being successful living now. So then we do the art exhibits, like I explained, and that's just a little quote. One day in the writing session did more for me than 3 years of therapy. And we hear that a lot. A lot of these veterans who didn't open up, one of them that we wrote, it was hilarious because he tells a story, and it wasn't Iraq that got him. It was Japan during the floods, like pulling out all the people that he had to pull out. And he's like, we wrote this song in 3 hours, and he just laughs. He's like, "Oh," he's like, "My psychiatrist is going to kill me." He's like, "She's been trying to get me to tell her this story for 8 years. And I was like, "Well, are you going to tell her now?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm going to play her this song." And so from that came even more kind of innovation, like how do we find these veterans? And so now we're actually building a prescription music platform so we can actually prescribe music. And so if they go to the VA hospital and they don't want to talk to their psychiatrist or therapist, and they say, "Okay, Vietnam, Marine, faith-based, suicidal ideations," it'll populate a song with that content in there. So they could play it for them right there, and they could be like, "Wait, what? This sounds like me." And they could be like, "Tell me more." And so like start talking about it. Then they download our app and they have access to all of our music, which then the clinician sees what they're listening to. So the next time they go there, they'd be, "Hey, you said something last week, but now you're listening to songs about family and relationship. Do you have an issue talking about your service?" And so they can actually find the root cause through listening to the music. So we're trying to be as innovative as we can to find the veterans and then help the veterans. Right now, currently, we have a mobile songwriting studio at a festival called Tailgates and Tallboys in Bloomington, Illinois, where Lady Wilson just played last night, Jelly Roll plays tonight, Nickel Black plays tomorrow night. We're just writing with veterans in real time. They're going to walk by, see our booth and say, "What's this?" And be like, "Hey, do you have a story to tell? Let's tell that story." Because out of the 20 suicides a day in the veteran military space, 14 don't seek help. So how are you trying to find them? You can have the best nonprofit in the world, but if you're not going after the ones that aren't seeking help, then who are you truly helping? And so that's what we do. So back to the beginning, I had to do one-on-one speeches with my speech teacher. Like, you remember that? I didn't do any other therapy. I didn't go to the VA for treatment besides getting my diagnosis. I didn't do anything besides learn art and music. And I ended up, the photo on the left is I got to speak at the Forum on Leadership. That night, the other speakers were Bill and Melinda Gates. It was Dr. Henry Kissinger was the keynote. President Bush was right here. I had the CEO of Boeing who announced me up. And I played a song in front of 365 of George Bush's, like his presidential center's biggest donors and leaders. And like, I went from there to there. And then just in November, I was on stage with Lainey Wilson. And people were like, "You were nervous for that?" I was like, "I didn't have to say anything." I was like, "That was the easiest one out of all of them." I was like, I legitimately just had to stand there and do my little wave. I was like, it was amazing. And so, but that's what I'm saying is, like, a lot of people always discount art and music. But when you do it in the right ways, when you teach it in the right ways, it can get you through so many hurdles. And so that's, I think that's the last of my story, but I wanted to leave time. Hopefully there's time for questions if people had them. So thank you.
So this is not a question, but sort of
infomercial. Have you ever been to our city hall in Brentwood, Tennessee? So if you go there, there's a piece of art that was commissioned and made back in 2013 that commemorates the service of our young guys and gals that went and served in the global war on terror. And it was, I don't know if you know a fellow named Ben Manza. He's a Marine, lost both his legs, went to high school with my son, and he and another fellow unveiled that also had lost their legs, both their legs. So it's there. And each, I believe, Jay, it's Armed Services Day, Veterans Day, they put look like little medals with the names of the folks that did serve in combat overseas. So it's been going on even a ways back. And so it's too bad that you picked Camp David. You go to White House Communications because that's I must have just missed it. So anyway, but that's just something for any, and also for all of you to know about that we did that. We commissioned that. Tractor Supply paid for it. So
That's awesome.
It's been around. So thanks.
Appreciate that.
This is a question that's kind of maybe not directly on topic, but listening to some of the reports coming from Ukraine and servicemen, veterans from U.S., Great Britain, and Australia who are serving with the International Legion. And I remember one interview, an American said that I was lost until I got here. And he said, I can't do anything but this right now. How does that resonate with your experience?
Well, I mean, that's why honestly, most veterans turn to police, firefighter. Like they think that that's all they have left and that's what makes them feel good again. That's like what my thought process was when I was going downhill so bad. I was just like, well, when was I happy and when was I doing something I was good at? I was like the Marine Corps. And so I thought if I can get to the FBI CIA agent, maybe that will heal me. So it's this misperception that because we were comfortable in one place and now we go downhill, that we'll be comfortable in another place. So I know so many of our veterans who like come home and they instantly go to contracting. So they go right back overseas because they think that's going to fix them, which only perpetuates the issues that they're having. So they're not actually treating the problem. They're just going and putting a Band-Aid over a bullet hole. And so, yeah, it's been a big issue in the military. And now they're getting a lot better at transitioning out. Like now the Wounded Warrior Regiment, which is not Wounded Warrior Project, the Wounded Warrior Regiment is now the Marine Corps' version of like, if you're injured, like in 2007, when I was injured, I would have went there if it existed. And they would have gave me opportunities to like learn how to repurpose myself into society. They'd teach me some art and music programming. They'd teach me how to build a resume. They'd teach me like what my issues would be and how to transition safely. But they didn't have that back then. And so they still need to like step up their game, what they're doing. But yeah, that's an issue we all fall back on, especially the ones that aren't seeking help. They just are like, I could do this on my own. I'll feel good if I go back to a war zone.
So tell us about CreatiVets. What the organization itself? How is it? Just you, or you got? I'm sure you have an organization of people. Where is it located? How are you funded, et cetera?
Yeah, so we now actually technically July 19th, but July 1 because our fiscal year start will be our 10-year anniversary. So we started in 2013, and for the first 4.5, 5 years, I wasn't even an employee in my own organization. We were a small organization. It was just me. It was like running everything. I brought on Kyle, who you saw last week. Kyle and Brett were my two. Until October of last year, there was only 3 full-time people running CreatiVets, and we run programs in 22 different states. We serve typically over 500 veterans a year. And I mean, we do so many events and programs, and it was insane when people here, we only had a staff of 3 people to do all this all over the country, running those programs in those different cities. So now we have 5 full-time employees and about 3 to 4 part-time and a few contractors who help, but we don't pay the songwriters anything. Like they do it because they want to. We've had Justin Moore, Granger Smith, Randy Rogers, Craig Campbell, Craig Morgan, Tyler Farr. All these artists actually spend time and sit there and write with veterans, and we don't have to pay them, which is awesome. But we want to make sure that veterans have no issue with finding us. So over the years, we've raised every single year we went up in fundraising and veterans serve. And so this year it's pretty incredible because we almost doubled. I think it's because of the CNN Heroes piece and a few others that we almost doubled in fundraising. But we also went up like 100 veterans that we served, and we start planning on the stuff that we're doing now, like going out to find the veterans. We're like more active doing that now. But was there anything specific that you wanted to hear about, like the process or whatever? Because right now it hasn't been a lot of state or government funding. It's been a lot of private donors, a lot of people who see what we do and they're just like, I love this. Like, I've never heard anything like this. I want to fund you directly. So we get like most of our money comes from individual donors. Yeah, 501c3. So we're chartered, technically we're Illinois chartered, but we're headquartered in Nashville. So we haven't, that was another question you asked. We have an office on 12th Avenue. Like right now, currently there's 8 veterans going through a mixed media arts class. It's free for anybody in the area. We do monthly, or usually bi-monthly art classes. We'll teach photography, mixed media, collage, sculpture, all this stuff. And so we'll be able to teach a bunch of veterans in the space. A lot of them, we actually even have a writing room in there. So if a veteran comes to our door and says, I'm getting a divorce, I don't know what's going on right now, but I need to talk and I don't want to go to the VA, we have a staff songwriter in a back room and a writer's room, and they could just go back there and write their story. So it's pretty incredible giving them direct access. And one day that will be a 24-hour art center, open makerspace for veterans. We have 3D printers there, large format printers, cameras, guitars, pianos, everything that they can need to come in there and do and create. And so hopefully that'll keep going. We have an art gallery in front too. So if you ever want to stop by, we're on 12th and Edge Hill. We're attached to Operation Stand Down, 3,500 square foot warehouse space. It's pretty amazing. Yeah.
Aside from stealing my joke about Kevin Bacon, wow, that was amazing. Thank you, Richard, for your thoughts, for your service in the Marine Corps and out of the Marine Corps, making our world a better place many times over. We appreciate you. And we certainly appreciate you coming here today. For our speaker, each week we have a very small token of our appreciation. We give you a pen. We also ask you to work for your gift. We ask you to sign a book that we're going to read to local elementary school students. I tell you what, we can do this in a little bit, but I'll just let you know we're going to have you sign that. I'm out of practice, man. You got to give me a break. Okay. So we're definitely going to get you to sign that book. We'll tell them a little bit about our speaker, who you are and what you've done for us as we read that story to them. Again, remember that we have our installation banquet on Thursday, the 29th, and do RSVP. Whether you are or not coming, let us know. Please stack your chairs and put away the tables. Please be welcoming to our guests and our last time guests, next time new members. And we will see you back here next Friday, but not the next Friday because you're going to be at Richland for the installation banquet. Any other announcements for the good of Rotary? All right, we are now adjourned to continue serving.